Have you ever had one of those days where you seem to make mistake after mistake? Well, I've made a few mistakes lately. For example, a couple of weeks ago I wasn't concentrating when I went to a cash point and I took out more money than I meant to. And because it was Saturday afternoon I couldn't put it back because the banks were closed. And that meant that my direct debit on Monday morning wasn't covered and I ended up with a bank charge. It was pointless, but we all make mistakes sometimes. I could give quite a few examples of late. Now sometimes they can be put right, but sometimes they can't, at least not fully. But what's important is that we learn from them. Well, I think I'll be more careful with cash points in future and concentrate a bit more. But this applies to our Christian walk as well. It could be that we've just started to hear from God maybe, and then we go overboard thinking that every thought we have has come from God. Or perhaps we've just had a spiritual dream, and then we think, well, every dream we have must have a spiritual meaning, and we sort of go off track at a tangent. Or maybe it's visions, because God does speak to us in visions. But then if you go overboard with that, you can start thinking that every thought in your imaginations is actually a vision from God. So often when we start something new, like hearing from God, we do make mistakes. But we're not supposed to stay there. The important thing is that we learn from these mistakes and we move on and we find a balance. I could give a personal example here. And that would be when I first learnt about the principle of giving and receiving. And I went through a stage of thinking that God was telling me to give people money all the time. But, I didn't stay there too long, thank goodness. But you know what I mean, I learnt from it. And now I'm more balanced with it. And I do give at times, but not all the time. It's when the Lord prompts me to. But I'm not talking about tithes and offerings here. That's different. I'm talking about giving to others. But anyway, what I'm saying, in a nutshell, is that we all make mistakes, and if you've made them, don't beat yourself up over them, but learn from them. That way something negative is turned into something positive. Because life's full of lessons, but what's important is that we do learn them, and we don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. God does allow us to make mistakes, because he knows that there's valuable lessons to be learnt through them, and he doesn't want us to miss those. But that doesn't mean he won't help us to get out of a mess. If we're in a tight spot, we can ask him and he'll show us. In fact, we can learn the value of relying on God at those times when we're in that situation, and he will instruct us how to avoid those mistakes again. But what is sad is when people don't ever learn from their mistakes and they go through life making the same mistakes over and over again. They won't listen when anyone tries to correct them. But if we can learn from them, we can even thank God for our mistakes sometimes, because of something good's come from them. And it reminds me of a line from a poem I read a few weeks ago on a video, and it was "Success is failure turned inside out." So maybe you've made a lot of mistakes recently and you're feeling a bit useless and like you don't want to bother trying anymore because everything goes wrong for you. If you can take a step back and look at it objectively, you might realise that you've actually learnt some things, and if you get back on your feet, you can be stronger and you can do these things better than before. And God's not condemning you either for mistakes. He wants to help you and he wants to teach you through them.